what's the number one threat to women's health right now? It's heart issues. It is
Yes.
1 out of 2 women are being diagnosed with heart disease. And a lot of that is finance-induced stress. They wear all the financial pressures. And
welcome to another episode of Aging with Grace 55 Plus Diane Gilman. I'm your co-host, Dale Josey, and you'll recognize my co-host, Diane Gilman, at almost 78 years young from QVC, from HSN, where she is the creator of DG2 Denim Jeans for Women. How are you, my fashionista friend?
Well, I'll tell you what. Not only am I great, because let's sing spring, but I am so excited to talk to Jeanette, and I will tell you why.
Why?
I recently saw an on-air program that just put ice water in my veins, and I'm going to call it the 80-80 syndrome. Do you know that 80% of all women who grow into their elder years alone, 80% of those women will die at the poverty line?
Oh, wow.
And in terms of marriage, 80% of women outlive their husbands and die alone. And a majority of those women have no understanding about how their retirement funds were truly planned out. And when I think back, after talking to Jeanette, because we always talk to our guests before our podcast, I think to myself, okay, my financial planners were all men. My lawyers were all men. Everybody that gave me advice, including business partners, were all men.
Wow.
Why does my generation, and probably the one right below it, and maybe the one below that, feel that we, number one, need to have a man tell us what to do with the rest of our lives? So, we've got a book for Jeanette called Wise Up, Women. And I could not agree more. And honestly, I love this episode because I've got some personal questions to ask
before
Jeanette.
We get to those questions, we're going to introduce our viewers to Jeanette Bajalia. But Jeanette is the author of Planning a Purposeful Life, Wise Up Women, the book that you just showed, Diane, which is a total guide to fiscal and physical well-being and retirement done right. She's also a weekly guest on the Financial Safari Show, which airs on WOKV 104.FM. And she's also a feature in the Wall Street Journal, Forbes, Reuters, Yahoo Finance.com. Bottom line, she is one of 20 women of influence in 2012. We're so happy to welcome Jeanette Bajalia to Aging with Grace 55 Plus Diane Gilman. How are you, Jeanette?
I am doing amazing, and I'm so excited to be here with you and Diane because Diane's new mission in life is exactly what my mission is, and that is to serve women, to help them, to empower them, and to wake them up.
Yeah, and to educate them and to innovate for them and to inspire them. And so you really made me think about my life, Jeanette, and thinking about my life from 50 onward. I realized that I was part of a generation, and I think the one below me too, that allows men to plan out and manage everything about our financial future. I mean, I'm sure I had choices about choosing women, but I always went to the man, and then getting all this conflicting advice. Like one says, oh, annuities are great. And then somebody else comes in and says, how dumb are you, Diane? Annuities are horrible. And then I'm thinking, oh, maybe I want to get a retirement home on an island like Dominican Republic. And then somebody else comes in and says, don't buy any property. You're way too old to buy anything. And oh, by the way, you're also way too old to be in the stock market at all. And actually, I got hammered in the stock market last year with male advisors. So, Jeanette, when you talk about Wise Up Women, a guide to total fiscal and physical health, I got a story to tell you, Jeanette, quick. So last year I was leaving the business I was in, which was very stressful, and leaving television after 30 years, very stressful, and going into my first year in my entire life of not earning money. And my cholesterol was like so dangerously high, I don't even think they had a gauge for it. It just went into a red zone. My blood pressure through the roof, all this bad news. And I said to my doctor, give me 1 year. Just give me a year. I'm leaving a very stressful situation. I've got to work on feeling secure. And guess what? Went back this week to the doctor. Blood pressure, perfect. Cholesterol, perfect.
Good.
All my symptoms, all my physical woes went away. So when you talk about a guide to total fiscal and physical well-being, that is fascinating to me. How did you, and I'm going to say you're a pioneer, you invented this niche area, and it's brilliant. So how did you get there?
Well, from personal experience and from life experience, Diane, because essentially I am a baby boomer. I ended up as a baby boomer, finding myself single, finding myself being a caregiver to 2 aging family members, finding myself the first female executive here, the first female this, first female that. And so you navigate life, life's journey as a solo. And so when I decided I wanted to close my first chapter, end my first career at the age of 55, I interviewed 5 financial advisors, all male. And this is after I had spent 3 decades as a caregiver funding my family's long-term care needs.
Wow.
So there was a big health orientation to my life. And then I'm a cancer survivor, and at a young
as am I,
so
right?
I funded that out of my pocket because I took an alternative route to cancer treatment. So when you think of the financial choices that women have to make, whether it's stepping out, scaling down careers, taking care of others, taking care of this, and then all of a sudden it was time for me to go invent my next chapter. And I interviewed 5 financial advisors. I was appalled with the way I was treated as a woman. I was just disgusted with what they were telling me with my money. Just put money here, put money there. And they all gave me the same financial solutions. And I said, this doesn't make sense. So that kind of provoked me and said, women deserve better in this industry. Women deserve better out of this financial industry. And I'm an agent of transformation. I'm going to go transform how both men and women are serviced by this financial industry, because it's more than the money. It's about total well-being. And that's the essence of that book, The Health Wealth Connection and Total Well-Being.
Yes.
Because you have to hold on to your health to hold on to your wealth. So
totally.
So that's kind of like what got me here. And I realized as I started my second chapter as in a financial industry, I was kind of like a little, just a little pain in the butt for many people, because I kept asking questions nobody wanted to answer.
Yeah, exactly.
I kept asking the hard questions and nobody had answers. But I said, I'm going to go find the answers to these. And I built a holistic financial planning model that integrated taxes, health, wealth, the money management, the health management, the legal management, the tax management. I put it all together because that's what people want. They want simple solutions to complex situations.
You know what? Exactly. I was always the money earner in my family my whole life, but I never understood money. So people would say, investment advisors would say, oh, put it in annuities. Look what it's going to do for you in your old age. Then somebody else comes along and says, oh my God, you put your money in annuities. That's the worst thing you could do. After last year and seeing how volatile everything is, honestly, I just want to buy a bigger mattress and put all my money under a mattress.
Yeah.
And that is a terrible thing to say, but you know what? I know two things for sure. I'm never going to understand the complexities of the market. And second of all, my entire life, and I think it had to start when I was just an infant, a toddler, you go to men for all that advice. You trust men when in fact, it's kind of illogical because they're not going to really ever understand our female psychology for losing a mate, feeling completely adrift and out to sea, maybe having to deal with depression, and at the same time having to face some really tough fiscal realities. So, of course, we know that having a full comprehension of your monies would be the best, and starting when you're 30 would be best. But honestly, Jeanette, I didn't even make my money for retirement until at 60 years old, I invented a baby boomer gene. And now, I don't know, market goes up, market goes down. One of my best friends, another male, said, "You are an idiot for putting any money in the stock market. You're way too old to have it in the stock market because when you lose, you cry like a baby. And when you win and you make money, it's like, oh, money's going to come in forever. I'm such a spendthrift." What is your advice to women?
My advice is this. There's no right answer, no wrong. There's no best tool. There's no worst tools. It's only the most appropriate tool that fits your life goals. You got to start with the goals. You got to start with the future vision. You start with a goal, your financial goal, your life goals. And then we take a current state assessment and we say, where are you now? And then which of your financial resources, what are you going to use at which life stage? Do you need to use them now? Do you need to use them soon? Do you need to use them later? Mm-hmm. Once you do the financial analysis and the financial plan,
that's so good.
It becomes self-evident because that's the education process. It becomes self-evident to you because I personally own 3 annuities in my retirement plan.
Oh my gosh, that makes me feel better.
And I have stocks. Now, if you gave me 100 annuity contracts, I'd probably reject 95 of them. There's some really good tools. They can be really ugly tools. You can't be sold a financial tool, whether it's an annuity, a life insurance policy, a stock portfolio, a bond portfolio. You can't be sold. It has to be a solution to a goal, to a problem you're trying to solve in your financial life. That's what's wrong with the financial industry. Yeah. It's a sales industry.
Well, you know, this topic is so important because what I was reading the other day, it said that women are living on average of 5 years longer than men. So that's why we're talking about we have to really tackle this topic, because if you're living 5 years longer, there's a high probability you're going to be widowed or you're going to otherwise end up single. So that's why this topic of financial planning is so critical. It is absolutely so critical. So when you talk about finance-induced stress, Jeanette, how does that impact women's financial well-being?
Well, okay, so here's what happens. Finance-induced stress creates metabolic syndrome. There's studies that shows it creates metabolic syndrome in women. So that's the onset of hypertension, cardiac disease, diabetes. Okay, what's the number one threat to women's health right now? Is heart issues. It is 1 out of 2 women are being diagnosed with heart disease. And a lot of that is finance-induced stress. They wear all the financial pressures. And think about the pandemic. During the pandemic, nearly 12 million women lost their jobs versus 10 million men.
That's right. I remember reading that.
The number of female-owned businesses dropped from 5.4 million to 4 million because they shut down. So think about that turning into medical issues. They don't have insurance.
My whole deal from last year. I was thinking, oh my God, even, everybody would like to retire at 65 except me. I wanted to live and work forever. So I'm retiring at 77 and I'm already like, oh my God, what if I live to be 100? I don't have enough money. What will I do? Can I buy a new pair of shoes? Can't I? I mean, I was like back and forth. And the truth is that even if you've got a husband who, let's say, is 10 years older than you, chances are, like for me, I was with somebody for 20 years, but the last 10 years, he was very ill. And I became the major caregiver and the major money earner as well. So not only do women live longer, but they probably become a caregiver much sooner than if it was turned around. And I can only tell you that my doctor almost could not believe what she was reading out to me this week, the difference between the stress level of being in a really toxic financial and business situation and somehow getting rid of that and having some peace of mind, which I have a little bit of right now. The difference it made in my health was literally extraordinary. So that's why I have so much respect for what you're doing, because you, apart from anybody else I know in the financial industry, are taking a holistic approach and realizing that women are really exposed because we're so misunderstood and so undereducated.
Exactly. And that's it. The financial industry is an industry that does not speak the language of women. It speaks some left brain language that says it's all about rates of returns and logarithms and managing risk. You know what, for women, we want to manage our lifestyle. We want to have a predictable lifestyle. We don't want to be a burden on the kids. We don't want to end up in nursing homes. So we want to keep ourselves healthy and active.
Yeah.
So when you think about the financial industry, they don't differentiate between the genders. Whereas women, like Del said, outlive their spouses. My data shows 9 years. The average age of widowhood in America is 59 years old. So when you think of all of the data, and then look at skilled nursing facilities, over 70% of residents are women, because here's what happens. Here's the reality of our elder years as women. They're navigating the rosy red brick road of the golden years. And the husband gets sick first, okay? The wife takes care of the husband or the partner or the significant other. They take the husband. The husbands, they will not put their husbands out. They won't hire the help. So they wear themselves out taking care of their spouse. Then what happens? Spouse dies. Then the woman is trying to recover. And then they have financial issue because they go from a married filing joint tax return to a single tax return. There's over a 400% increase in taxes if you want to maintain your lifestyle, because that single tax return is ugly. So they had the first reality check of, oh my gosh, how come I'm having to write a $5,000 check to IRS?
Yeah.
My husband and I never paid taxes. And so it starts, then they start worrying about financial matters.
Wow.
And then here it comes is a woman's number one priority. I do not want to be a burden on my children. I want to age in place. I want to age in my home. So what are the financial plans and models that we have to build to give you the confidence as a woman that you can achieve your life goals with or without a significant other or a spouse?
Yeah, because that period of life from, 55 onwards, I think for females is a real dichotomy for what it is for males. And I was sitting recently with a group of women, all fairly well off in Manhattan, and the entire conversation, except for me, was, my husband is sick. It's a progressive disease. He has no more energy. He can't work. I'm taking care of him. I get out during the day because I have a little help coming in, but really worried. I mean, that whole table, 5 women with 5 very similar stories. And all of them, you could tell, except for maybe one who had been the vice president of a Hollywood studio for several years. So at least she really understood fiscal issues.
Yeah.
None of them were prepared. And the other thing too, Jeanette, I think, is women make decisions emotionally, but you're advised by men who see everything on a spreadsheet.
Exactly.
The one thing I learned was that movie, which I never saw, but because I don't like rom-coms, but Think Like a Man. Whenever I go into a business meeting, especially if I'm looking or trying to get funding or backing or foundation for a business, it's definitely act like a man, right? But when in fact, that is not how our brains are wired. I'm not kidding you. My first thought when I went into semi-retirement, which lasted about 5 or 6 weeks, and now obviously got our own podcast and doing a million things, I was saying to myself, what? I can't buy a new pair of Gucci loafers? You've got to be kidding me.
But here's what I invite you and your audience to think about is it's the plan, the holistic financial plan that gives you permission to live life and have a lifestyle. Money is only there to serve a purpose, and the purpose is to create the lifestyle.
That's
so
good.
When you don't have that holistic plan put together, how you get predictability to getting the money that you need to fill the gap between your Social Security check, your business income, and what you want to spend. That is what financial planning does for women. It gives them the confidence and it empowers them to go live their life the way they want to. Now, you have to have a plan to stress test, can you? Now, there's a lot of people who have $1 million, appetite on a $10,000 budget. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being deliberate about putting a holistic plan together for every one of your life stages, and then partnering with a like-minded financial professional, like-minded, that will listen to you and that will redirect that plan when life's going to throw you curveballs. You've had them, I've had them. Life's going to throw you curveballs. A plan is only as good as it deals. It continues getting managed and monitored in the context of those life events, whether they're economic life events like the pandemic, or whether they're personal life events like my husband was diagnosed and dead in 5 months.
Wow. Jeez. Diane, before we go on for our listeners, our guest at this point of Aging with Grace 55 Plus with Diane Gilman is Jeanette Bajalia. She brings a woman's perspective to retirement, lifestyle, protection, and planning. She's counseled clients on a comprehensive range of issues from lifetime income planning and tax reduction strategies to estate planning and the effects of money matters on the emotional and physical health of women. We have about 5 minutes left. And before Diane asks you your final question, one of the things I think is very interesting when I was preparing and studying for this interview with you, Jeanette, I saw a study that talked about how female leaders as CEOs of the family, there was a survey from Forbes magazine, which said there's just isn't enough time to think long-term about estate planning. So for a practical, real application, how do women carve that out as practically the CEO of the family to think long-term about their estate planning, giving all the other demands, all the other pressures? What's some practical advice, madam?
Well, my practical advice is it's going to take more time by not having it done when life throws you those curveballs. Because when you think about estate planning, it doesn't have to take a long time. If you put a high value on it, the human condition, people find time to do the things that they value.
Good point.
So you have to
so
say,
true.
do I value giving my family the greatest gift I can give them, giving my loved ones the greatest gift I could give them, a holistic estate plan, but that includes all the proper legal documents, all the proper financial instruments, the money, the life insurance, everything pulled together to achieve that CEO's goals, because they don't have time I would say it's somewhat of an excuse, because you find time to go deal with the kids. You find time to go, you know, have lunch with your
Jazzercise or whatever.
girlfriends.
Yeah.
Fine. And two, the industry, it doesn't invite creative and flexible opportunity.
So true.
If I had a client that I work with presidents of companies, and they want a virtual meeting at 7 o'clock at night, I'm willing to accommodate, because I know they have the careers from, you know, where, you know, it's just stressful.
And you're right, Jeanette, there aren't a lot of creative guys out there. So one last question to ask you is, do you find that the majority of women you work with who come to you, who maybe read your book and then want to have a virtual meeting with you, that they have no idea of the state their finances are in once their husband has passed? Do you find a lot of women in a state of panic, and what you do for them is honestly give them an emotional as well as a veritable financial foundation? What do you, if you had to sum up who you think your most needy clientele is and what you do for them? Because Dale's looking at me like, we have 3 minutes left, Diane. I would talk to you forever. So give me a clue here. I would love to know.
I would say there's confused clients more than there's needy clients. They're clients that sat in the financial discussions with their spouses when they were alive, but the financial advisor didn't engage them and didn't speak their language, so they don't know what they don't know. And so I like to think about it in the context of, you have a life event and it's time to redirect every element of your plan, your life plan, to say, okay, which means everything has to change. So I basically do a current state assessment, and I say, well, let's look at everything, because women are, one of the reasons they don't make a lot of progress in the financial industry when they have that life event is they're afraid to say they don't know. That we're, because we're talking to men, and it's like we're going, oh, I just feel stupid because
and I
don't know.
Yes, I just feel stupid. If I admit how much I don't know, then honestly, on their terms, on their level, I actually am stupid. And yet, most of the guys I speak to, Jeanette, I am far better on the initial phase of making money than they are. I just don't know what to do with it after that.
And there's no guilt anywhere. And I don't want to bash the financial industry something. All I want to encourage your audience to say is, let me get a second opinion.
That's good. That's
understand. Let me just understand what someone else, the advisor that helped your parents and you inherited their wealth, or the advisor that was your husband's, the relationship with your husband may not be the right advisor for you, but don't just flee that advisor. Just get a second opinion. Just say, what is it that you can educate me? That a second opinion is a form of education. And I tell the prospective clients that I serve, I say, here's an analysis. Now here's 5 questions to go ask your advisor. And if they can answer them to your satisfaction, stay with that advisor.
Yeah, you know what? So I think what you're saying is almost that you're a money doctor. The way that I searched around for a GP, a general practitioner, and it had to be somebody I could talk to, had to be somebody that understood my attitude towards medicine after having cancer, had to be somebody where I could actually tell them the truth and confide in them. That's what you're saying, that you are and have honed your skills as a financial doctor.
That's so good.
It's up to you to make people, women, whole and well again in what may be a very mysterious land of no longer having a mate, or for somebody like me, coming to great success very late in the game and not knowing how to strategize. But fascinating discussion.
Absolutely.
Jeanette, I just loved talking to you.
And let me ping off what Diane's saying. With a financial doctor, Jeanette, everybody can find their doctor, right? So if someone was to want to find you, madam, what's your contact information, website? How are they going to hold of Jeanette Bajalia?
You can go into my website. It's Womans, WOMANS -worth, WORTH.com. You can contact me directly at the office at 904-824-5656. And then you could just go into our info, just send an email through the website, go into our info. You can go into my Facebook page, Woman's Worth Facebook page. We communicate through Facebook. We're limited because we're a regulated industry, so we can't put a lot out on Facebook. Right. So those are, and I'll be glad to give anyone who wants a copy of my book, Wise Up Woman, I'll be glad to mail them a complimentary copy of the book.
That's
and
so
it's a great book with a great philosophy to it.
Thank you so much, Jeanette. And folks, you'll know that our audience, I keep saying folks, like I'm from Kentucky or something. I'm from New York. I live in Kentucky.
You are from
Kentucky. So I'm going to say for our audience, trust you have enjoyed as much as Diane.
Last time I checked, Louisville was in Kentucky, but I could be wrong.
I got to get rid of that, folks. Jeanette Bajalia, thank you so much. And folks,
thanks so much,
audience
Jeanette.
will understand why for 35 years, she has brought a woman's perspective to retirement, lifestyle, protection, and planning. Thank you so much. Keep the good fight going, Jeanette. We truly appreciate you. Bye-bye.
Oh, you're welcome.
Fabulous. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
You know, Diane, what was interesting about that interview with Jeanette, and you can identify with this question, do you find women over 55 are from a generation that allowed men to plan out and manage their financial future?
I did. I'm from that generation. And when I look back, I realized all my business partners were men. All my CPAs were men. All my financial advisors were men. And I chose these people, or these people were brought to me. And I kind of felt like, oh, I don't know anything about this area of my life. Okay, I'll just go with what they say. And then if you are lucky enough to make some money, then suddenly the whole game changes. And all these guys are bashing all these other guys. Oh my gosh, you went into annuities. Oh my gosh, that's a disaster. I've got to take over for you, and I'm going to get you out of annuities, and it's going to cost you, but it'll be better for you in the long run. Really? At almost 78 years old, you're going to totally change everything around? Wow. And lose me more money? Well, you really need that. Annuities are the devil. Then you talk to somebody else, and it's annuities are fine, but your problem is bonds. Yeah. And bonds are going up and down, and you get so much cross information. And when you are sitting in a room with these guys, especially if it's from a big company, too big to fail company. Yeah. They're all men. You're sitting in a conference room and they're like 8 guys and you. And all those guys know something about money and you don't know anything. You know, I was having a field day in the stock market up until 2022. And then I lost a pretty extraordinary amount of money during the stock market. And, you know, I just flipped out and said, everything's got to go into something uber conservative. And so where you were really seeing putting your money in stocks as a revenue stream, it suddenly became a dangerous black pit loss scheme. And, you know, these guys are all geniuses when they're all making money. And then I just said, you lost an inordinate amount of my savings in my estimation. Why? And how? Well,
but you know what ticks me off? You know what ticks me off?
You are in Las Vegas when you're on the stock market, and it happens.
Except what you said is so true. But guess who still gets paid? You've lost your money. But guess who still gets paid? It's a guy who gave you a calculated estimate that did not work. Sorry, you lost your money, but I'm still drawing six figures. You know, that's what really upsets me.
Question I always ask is, what do you do with your money? Put it in a bank account that earns 1%, put it underneath your mattress, put it in a closet shoebox.
Right.
I don't know the name of the game. I'm never going to. I can tell you that is not who I am. But the real truth is, there must have been an opportunity along the way to have at least one female advisor. And back to your question, am I from a generation that put my confidence in men, always surmised that they knew more, always thought that there was a mode of authority there that I should be listening to, and therefore an umbrella of safety? Yeah. And then the conclusion I come to is that is very generational for me.
Yeah.
And if I was to do it again, I would do more shopping. I would shop the market. Shop the market. Yeah, well, I shop for shoes more, but I'd shop the market more for people that were very wise and gave me alternatives. Like, you don't have to do it this way, Diane.
Right.
You can do it that way. Or I can even tell you that in recent talks I've had about finances, we didn't even broach on, what are you going to do when you get older? All right, do you want to go into assisted living? Do you want to go into a nice retirement community? No.
Right.
Do you want care at home? Yeah, but how? And you don't even get into those conversations. That's way too much. I'm still just trying to understand what an annuity is.
Right.
You know,
you're not alone on that, you know.
I'm not alone, but it's definitely not an advantageous place to be. And I can tell you, just in Hollywood, horror stories, because I grew up in LA and Beverly Hills. I remember when Doris Day, she married her manager. His name was Melchior. And he never bothered to tell her that he gambled all the money away.
No.
When he died, it was just smoke and mirrors. She had nada, zero, nothing. There's a very famous story about a model. I'm not going to mention her name because she's still alive. But the very first white-haired model, she's magnificent. And she was going out with a talk show host from a big talk show during the whole Maury Povich period.
Sure.
And he said, I've got someone you've got to invest your money with. He's going to make you a fortune. And when her boyfriend dropped dead, she realized it was Bernie Madoff, and she didn't have a dime. That's how she became the first white-haired model. She actually had to go back to work, so
that kind of goes.
I can tell you stories again and again and again about women who entrusted their husbands or their boyfriends with all their financial planning and assumed that these guys were geniuses, and they were either crooks or had an addiction to something like gambling. Or had ill advice themselves. No question is beneath you. I recently said, why is my money sitting in a bank account that earns less than 1%? And yet the Fed keeps raising percentages. And my banker finally kicked in and said, oh yeah, we've got a kind of concierge account where you can earn 5.5%. I said, so put my savings in.
Right. Do
there,
something.
My gosh.
Do something. What's the matter with you?
don't be afraid to be, as we say in New York, a nudge.
Right.
Nudge them. It's
nudge them.
your money. Your money,
nudge.
your life.
Now, Diane, I want to, as we wrap up this episode in the remaining 2 minutes that we have,
Yeah.
and by the way, I'm going to take you back to your story of losing the house, and times were different, depression period, which I think it may have impacted your look on finances. But before we get there, gentle readers, we have Too Young to Be Old, How to Stay Vibrant, Visible, and Forever in Blue Jeans. This is an amazing book. It chronicles Diane Gilman's story, which includes 28 years on QVC HSN, where she became the #1 telepersonality after creating DG2 denim jeans for women. So I set the question up. How went your early life? How does it affect how you feel about finances and your approach to this today?
You know, I will I will tell you a story. Just for anybody that has not read my book, and that's many, and doesn't know my life. My parents were immigrants from Ukraine and Poland. I was firstborn American. My mother grew up, her father, my grandfather, was very good with building and became a contractor and built a lot of homes in Portland, Maine, and invested all his money. And when 1929 hit, they lived in a mansion with a huge ballroom and an incredible double staircase. And she was a debutante. She went from debutante overnight to servant. My mother became the chambermaid. The mansion became a transient boarding house for out-of-work men. And my grandmother became the cook. And my grandfather went from master builder to handyman.
Oh, no.
And so I grew up under a cloud of everything could be poverty the next minute. And I really rebelled against it. And I remember, well, I used to be very messy. I'm pretty much a neatnik now. But I remember I would come home from school every day, throw my clothes off, put my play clothes on, run out and play, throw those off, put something else on for dinner. So one day I came home and there were no clothes anymore at all. And I called my mother in to my bedroom and I said, "Where are my clothes?" And she said, "I'm holding them hostage because you're such a slob and you won't clean up. I'm holding them hostage and you're going to have to do the dishes for the next 2 weeks to get your clothes back." And I looked at her and I said, "That will be the last time this ever happens to me." I remember I was 9 years old. I said, "Because I'm going to grow up and be a famous designer and hire people to hang up my clothing for me."
Great story.
So I already, before I was even into an age with double digits, I already had it figured out. I wasn't going to do any of this stuff. I was going to make enough money. I was willing to work hard enough to get other people to help me. So ladies, remember one thing. When you go out to figure out what you're doing with your money, whether it's yours or you're still in a family situation, just remember it's your money. You've got choices.
That's so good.
You have every right and all the worth to speak up, educate yourself, and get what you want and deserve.
That's so good. And what a great way to end this show on financial well-being for women. And when you talk about find out what you're worth and make those decisions, we certainly hope that you will find our weekly YouTube channel worthy as well. Every Saturday morning, 10 a.m., fresh episodes here with Diane Gilman.
Yeah, coffee and bagels and us, Dale and Diane.
Dale and Diane.
Coffee,
Dale and Diane.
#1 priority. Bagels, must have. Dale and Diane, good way to sit at your kitchen counter and hopefully learn something new, be inspired, and be actively innovative in your own life. We are about everything 55 plus.
I love it. And that's going to be the last words. Diane, you got the last words instead of me.
Naturally, as always, Dale. I
love it.